We were working on the Porter scene from Macbeth, and as always happens, you're working on one thing and focusing on one thing. We were looking at the comedy of the Porter scene, and something else happened. It was a 2-day workshop, and between the first day and the second day, I went back to the text because I realised there was something funny going on in the text, that the text had a strange shape, that Shakespeare was trying to do something very particular. I didn't know what it was, except the next morning I realised what it was. And what it was that the sequence around the killing of Duncan involves three offstage locations. There's the door behind which Duncan's been killed. There's the door where Lady Macbeth and all the others come and go to the other chambers. Yeah? And there's the south entry, where Macduff comes in and goes to the door, finds Duncan. And what I discovered was that there was clear evidence in the text that Shakespeare was organising it so that those 3 offstage locations could be behind just 2 doors. One door's locked down as Duncan's door, the other one flips. And he's written bits in the text to enable that flip to happening without the audience thinking, that's funny, how come Macduff didn't meet Macbeth as he walked off and he walked on? So I then co-wrote an article about that, and that came to the attention of Andrew Gurr, the great theatre historian, and he said, you really should take this further. And I did, and he's regretted it ever since because we've been fighting like cat and dog over the number of entrances. I've very explicitly excluded the central entrance. A lot of scholars believe that there was a third space here, a discovery space, curtained. The curtains could be drawn back, and that's where you would have your discoveries that are set from backstage. Now, I'm in a minority here, but just recently Leslie Thompson, a very prestigious scholar, has come out and pointed out to the theatre historians that have been pushing this discovery space for a long time that there was actually no term at the time for this entity. There were terms for the doors, the trapdoor, the gallery, the posts. They didn't have a word to describe this thing that we think was there, which is very interesting. So I'm prepared to nail my whatever to the mast. Okay, so then I moved to performance studies here, and on the basis of that work, I then went to the London Globe in 1995, before it had been finished, went out on the stage when there was no one else in the theatre, tried to do every soliloquy I knew, and realised that that space was way too big, that it couldn't possibly be right. So that led to another lot of research that I did on the evidence for how big the original globes were. And those of you that have been to the pop-up globe, that is a realisation of my research. The dimensions there, it's much smaller than the globe. It fits the archaeology, whereas the London globe doesn't. London globe's 100 feet across, the pop-up globe is 86 feet across. And that's only, you say, 7 feet difference in radius. But 7 feet difference in radius, if you remember your maths, pi r squared, it's a big difference. If you square the radius and multiply by pi, the yard in London's 1.5 times as big as the yard of pop-up globe. It's very different. The actors are working against the theatre. They're working their butts off to try and reach the galleries, whereas the pop-up globe, the actors love it. So that's where I've been. Now, what this is going to be is about workshopping, actually, as a technique, because I believe that workshopping is an extraordinarily powerful technique to get to an understanding of how the texts were designed to be worked. I mean, Shakespeare wrote the plays for a big space. We've got a thrust stage that isn't quite as big as it should be, but it's a question not just of size, it's a question of size and proximity. The fact that you're all close to this big space has got a number of implications. Firstly, you can't actually see the whole stage in one glance. You've got to keep looking around to look at the character down there and the character up here and that other one over there and what's going on. So your attention patterns become much more active. And that is what makes you think it's so interesting. It's not necessarily what's going on the stage, it's what you're having to do. Wow, things are happening here. It's that the self, the sort of reflective dimension of the audience experience.